It is a great pleasure to introduce a very dear and extremely powerful, promising young scientist, the youngest member so far of GUSP, and who has also come from a long way to be with us today. And Dr. Pachauri came from as far as New Delhi to be with us today. And this is Dr. Aftab Ahmad, who is currently certainly one of, I think most would say, the foremost young scientist in Pakistan today. He is founder and president of the National Academy of Young Scientists, NAYS, or NAYS, in Pakistan, where he oversees 3,500 registered members and 200 officials engaged in 15 national and international projects. He is also chairman of the Islamic World Young Scientists Academy, founder and chairman of the Center for Education, Science and Technology, CEST, vice president of the World Merit Pakistan Council, founder of the Pakistan Stem Cell Society, and chief coordinator and former president of Sci Forum Pakistan. Dr. Ahmad earned his master's and his PhD degrees at the School of Biological Sciences at the University of Punjab in Lahore, Pakistan, and conducted postdoctoral research in tissue engineering at Nara Institute of Science and Technology in Japan. He is the author of 5 books already and more than 50 publications in the field of cell and molecular biology. He also coordinates international affairs for Technology Times and Tech TV in Pakistan, and has organized and presented at over 50 workshops and 100 seminars and symposia. Dr. Ahmad's many awards include the Scientific Exchange Award from the American Association for the Advancement of Science, and the Young Investigator Award from the Pakistan Cardiac Society. He is a fellow of the Zoological Society of Pakistan and a member of many international scientific societies, as well as a deeply inspiring, wonderful, spiritually oriented individual. It's a pleasure to invite Dr. Ahmad to the stage.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's greatly pleasure to be here in Kiev. This is my first visit of this beautiful country, and I arrived the day before, and I looked around to different places. They are really beautiful, so I really enjoyed to be stayed in Kiev. Well, after the talk by Professor Pachauri, it's really hard to talk on the same topic because he has elaborated the topic in such a detailed way that we can't give a lot more information. Well, I think you are bombarded with a lot of information since the morning because there were a lot of discussions and the topics are really important, so you are very much concerned with those topics, but still I will try to give some flair of different information so you can absorb those information. They will be a bit different as well. So first thing, the work I'm doing is some of the work that I'm doing beside the environmental sciences about the cell and molecular biology. So one of the things you might be aware is the stem cell research. So how many of you know about these stem cells? So not many people. Well, stem cells are the cells which are undifferentiated cells, and they can differentiate to make any type of the cells in the body. One of the projects that I was doing is very interesting because in that case, before this it was we used to think that the old cells, they can't be de-differentiated, they can't be reprogrammed back into the stem cells. But there was latest development in the field, and we could reprogram the mature cells back into embryonic stem cell-like cells. So it's if Professor John is 60 years old, then his neuronal cells will also be 60 years old because they don't actually divide further. So his neuronal cells are 60 years old cell. So by this technology, what we can do, we can reprogram the 60 years old cells back into 10 days old cells. So that is at the stage when we were just 10 days old during the developmental process. So this is the technology, that's amazing. But it's not surprising because this is at the cellular level. Can we do similar thing with the human? Can we reprogram a 60 years old person into a young 20 years old person? So that's the next target for the scientists, and there is a lot of work in this area in which we are like trying that we can actually first stop the aging process, and later on we can actually reverse the aging process. And there is a latest development in this field as well, because we could find some of the chemicals which involve in the regulations of the genes which are in the aging process. These are called the sirtuins family of genes, which are actually involved in the aging process of the human. So what we can do, if we can activate those genes later in the process, we can actually reverse the aging process. And the experiment was done on the mouse. A 2-year-old mouse was fed with a specific chemical, and we can reprogram that mouse, a 2-year-old mouse, into a 6-month-old mouse. That is, if we can reprogram Professor John, a 60-year-old person, into a 20-year-old person. So this was just to give you some interesting information. So I'm going to my presentation now. Look, at the prehistory time, we were living at very isolated places, far, far away. And then there was agricultural revolution that actually started the civilization. So we had different civilization. Like in Pakistan, we have Indus Valley civilization. There was civilization in the Middle East. There was civilization in South America, and so on. So that was the start of civilization. That was the agricultural revolution. And 18th century, there was industrial revolution. So the first industrial revolution, the phase 1, was to use the fuel to start this industrial development. And later on, there was electricity. That was the second generation of industrial revolution that has made the process a bit more automated, so we can use the electricity. Later on, after 1950s, there was a third generation of industrial revolution, and that was actually the use of electronics. So there was a discovery of internet, and we can use the computation technology, and that was the third generation of industrial revolution. And that has led to the world divided into developed countries and developing countries. But as Professor Saab, he has mentioned that this industrial revolution, actually, these anthropogenic activities has led to a major climate change, and we are facing the consequences of those climate change. This is the fourth generation. This is the start of fourth industrial revolution, and this will be pretty amazing. The life of this planet will be totally different now, and what we are going to see is a totally different world. This is gonna be an information revolution. So those countries who are putting more emphasis on information, on knowledge, on development, they will be the leading countries in the world, and those countries which are not putting that much emphasis, they will be lag behind. That's why we are here today, so we can discuss the issues that we are facing today. We can actually manage these problems, and we can work in a way to solve these problems in a better way. Can I have the slides, please? Till then, I will start. I keep talking and talking. So
I have a PowerPoint of you here. Do you have it there?
And there, project the,
There you go.
and you have to change, like pointer.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
There it is.
So as we were discussing that this is like the information revolution, and we have to work very hard, and we have to work very carefully so we can manage our problems. And this is the time actually we have to focus on these problems, because otherwise it will be too late, as a professor mentioned, that this is the time we have to act and we have to solve these problems. So this is the This is from IPCC, so the chair is also here. One of the gravest effects of climate change may be those on human migration. If we take the example from the history, there were so many civilizations, like the Mayan civilization, the Middle East, there were many civilizations, the Chinese dynasties, they were also destroyed by these climatic effects. So there was a lot of migration in the world. This is not a new concept, it was done in the history. But as there are rapid climatic changes now, this has more profound effect in the present era, and there is a lot more migration in this era of the world. So the climatic change is long-term variation in global climatic patterns. So I will give you two examples. They will also be very interesting. This is just very basic information. Look, we get the sunlight, that is the heat, and when it struck to the earth, it reflected back in the form of infrared radiation. So the heat goes back into the atmosphere. When there is a snowfall and snow-covered area, there is a more reflection of that heat. But what happens if there will be no snow? Then that all heat will be absorbed, and there will be more retention of that heat that will accelerate the melting of that ice. So what will happen? There will be increase in temperature, there will be rise in the sea level, and many other consequences. So this is how one of the challenges that we are facing is the melting of the ice in the Antarctic regions and other high regions of the world. Another problem is, as he has mentioned, that there is an emission of CO2. The concentration of this CO2 is increasing in the atmosphere. So what happens with this increase in CO2? It is actually absorbed by the ocean. So when it goes into the water, CO2 reacts with H2O and it forms an acid. So this acid is actually making our oceans more acidic. And it has very drastic consequences because there will be actually less mineralization in the ocean. There will be increase in, so all the algae are there which do the photosynthesis process. So those algae will be greatly affected by this acidification, and there is like lot more acidification in the oceans nowadays. So these are the major challenges that we have to face, and we have to work very hard so we can solve these problems. This is the CO2 emission, and you can see this is the tons of CO2 per person per year, and it is mainly from the industry-rich countries or the developed countries. So the developed countries, they are pouring more CO2 into the atmosphere, as you can see in the Northern America, in the European country, Russia, and in Australia. So these countries, they are pouring more CO2 into the atmosphere. But what are the consequences? Which countries are more vulnerable to this climatic change? So you can see over from the map, those countries which are actually pouring more CO2 into the atmosphere, they are not that vulnerable. Only the developing countries, mainly you can see over here, in the African regions, in the South Asian regions, and this part of the world, you can see these countries are more vulnerable to this climatic change. There is a number of deaths, and this is a record from 1995 to 2015, and these are the effect of climatic changes. And you can see hundreds of thousands of people died in storms, in extreme temperature, in floods, and many other environmental consequences. So the effect is very real, and these are the deaths, and you can see the economic consequences of these climatic change very well. This is the flood in Pakistan in 2012. And believe me, 1/4 of our country was underwater at that time. This is one of the consequences that we can face due to this climatic change. So the topic, this slide is very much relevant that we are talking in this specific topic. The climate change in the form of drought, in the form of flood or extreme weather, extreme temperature, that result in migration. Like if there will be flood, there will be migration. And you can see a lot of migration in African countries. So climate change results in migration, and when there is a migration, there will be more competition, because when there will be more people in some specific, like we took the example of, like there is a Syrian crisis and more people are going to Lebanon, and there will be more competition for basic life needs. There will be more competition for water, for shelter, for food and other resources. And what happens with these problems? There will be more conflicts. because now you have to struggle for basic life needs, for the struggle for the food, for the water, and other resources, and that results in interpersonal conflicts, like people are fighting with each other, there will be murders and other problems, and there is also intergroup conflicts. That could be ethnic groups, and that could be like a fight between the region. So these are the real problems that we have to face if we didn't work on the climate change. By the way, if I ask you a question, like, do you think the climate change is a real problem? How many people think it's a real problem? Okay, it's good that they have like translated the things and then they got the question. So you people are very much aware and you understand that this is a real problem, and then we have to solve this problem in a very real way, and that's why we are here today to discuss these problems. 2% rise in temperature that is projected to be in 2050. Look, this is a cohort data, is a statistically significant data that indicate a 1 degree increase in temperature around the Earth that increased 20% conflict rate. And if there will be 2 degree increase, that will increase at 40% conflict rate. So there will be much more conflicts in the world if there will be more temperature in the world. And this is the real challenge that we have to face and have to. One good thing is, for the first time, there is a 10% of the global population is living in poverty. That's a great development, and that's through the Industrial Revolution. But one of the challenges that we have is the number of active conflicts and fatalities. So there is an increase in the standard of life, but there is a much more increase. As you can see, from 2008, there were 63 active conflicts and 56,000 fatalities of that conflicts. But in 2014, there were over 180,000 fatalities due to these conflicts. So there is a much increase in fatalities, and it's mainly due to these climatic effects. There are some fragile cities, and as the previous speaker, he was talking from Kabul, that is one of the most fragile and extreme risk city. 2 cities like Karachi is in Pakistan and Lahore is in Pakistan. We are also one of the extreme danger zones of the world. So we have to go for these technologies that can bring peace in those bigger cities, so we can have more economic advancements and more technological advancement to solve the problems of the world. In addition to this, can we have the next one? Next slide. Sorry for this. It's not working. Okay, so the next way is it's not only the conflicts that we are facing, but the problem is of the health issues. So with this increase in climate, this climatic change, there will be extreme heat, severe weather, air pollution, change in vector ecology, increasing allergies, water quality impacts, and water and food supply impact. So there are so many impacts of this climatic change, and that result in number of diseases. Whatever diseases you can talk about is about the cardiovascular diseases or cancer or diabetes and many other diseases and vector-borne diseases. All diseases will also be increased if there will be more climatic changes. And this is how we have to prepare ourselves, that we have to work very carefully. So I have mentioned that there are a number of problems that we are facing. So there must be some solution for these problems. And what are the solutions? First thing is we have to adapt to this climatic change. If there is an increase in temperature, if there is a drop, then we have to adapt ourselves. So there is a less need of human migration. So first thing is we have to prepare ourselves for this adaptation. The other thing is sustainability. It's very important that we go for sustainability. We can go for green practices, whatever we can develop the infrastructure in a way that need less energy to sustain, and so on. So we have to work very hard to achieve the sustainability. And then we have to reduce and manage these climatic change. We have, as Professor mentioned, that we have to reduce the emission of CO2. We have to work in a way that we can grow more trees. We have to change our lifestyle in a way that we can grow for less climatic changes. So these are the things that we should work. so we can have, so these are the things that we should work, like we have to adopt and we have to mitigate these problems. At the end, this is one of the definitions that I found for the peace, and I'm going to share with you. It is called to be in peace when somebody is permitted to grow, prosper, by fulfilling his legitimate demands through conducive environment. So this is how we can promote the peace in the world, and this is we can do with the countries as well, like the Ukraine and Russia. We can solve the problem by mutual understanding and we creating a conducive environment. At the end, I must acknowledge Professor John for giving me the opportunity to talk to you people, Professor Pachuri, and organizers of this. They have done a wonderful job. Believe me, for the last 2 days, you could attract so many people. It's wonderful to be here, to interact with the people. Organizers have done a very good job. And I'm also thankful to Global Union of Scientists for Peace and the people of Ukraine for hosting this wonderful event. That's really a great thing.
Thank you. I wish we were all so dynamic. And I wish our brains were all 10 days old. So it's very, very exciting talk. If the world were filled with such dedicated, brilliant young minds committed to the cause of peace, the world could be changed very quickly.